Every woman deserves to feel vibrant, safe, loved, and feel her power. The Woman's Vibrancy Code podcast is here for a potent use of your time. We will cover energy, hormones, and libido with episodes that also dive into entrepreneurship, money mindset, feminine power, and much, much more. Introducing Maraya Brown, Yale and functional medicine trained women's health expert, midwife, mom, and entrepreneur.
Hello, everyone. Maraya Brown here. Let's talk about PMS. So this is for the women who are struggling with PMS. Really looking forward to covering some signs and symptoms as well as solutions. So for those of you that don't know who I am, my name is Maraya Brown. I'm a Yale and functional medicine trained women's health expert. I have been attending births for 23 years, managing the women's health in various spaces since 2007, as well as international health projects around the world. And now I work online as a women's health expert. And specifically, I help women with their exhaustion, their hormone answers, and also helping them turn on their passion. And obviously that's done from diet, lifestyle, supplementation, mindset shift, energy shift, trauma release reduction, or trauma reaction reduction, we should say, because it's all relevant and it's all important. Let's get into the nitty gritty of this, and I'm just going to dive right in. So PMS, Premenstrual Syndrome, some call PDD. I'm going to just refer to it as PMS for the context of this conversation. Let's talk about what it's exacerbated by, what it is, and some things that you can do from the comfort of your own home to try to see if you can get feeling better. Okay. So one of the things I want to say out loud is this is for any females in puberty. This is for females that are in their fertility years, postpartum, perimenopausal years. So that 35 to 55 age range, when generally the PMS starts really shifting. Like I think of puberty and perimenopause as the two bookends of the times in a chapter in a woman's life where the PMS really becomes striking and the viper comes out in a bigger way. The menstrual migraines come out, the weight changes, the bloating, the constipation, the body aches. But the big thing that I hear most often is the fatigue and the emotional irritability, just like wowza. And holy macaroni, when you've got a woman in perimenopause with daughters that are going through puberty and in their teenage years, now you've really got a big old storm, right? So 75% of women will experience PMS. So just because it's common does not mean it's normal. I want to say that out loud. And I'm going to be talking about this from the perspective of hormones, yes, but also give you some really practical things that you can do with diet modification, some supplementation suggestions, and also lifestyle. As a reminder, I am a provider. I am not your provider. So always consult with your provider before making steps. And it's always nice to get a quantifiable peek at what's actually happening in your hormones. I will say, if your provider is suggesting that they order your hormones through blood, it's just simply not the best way to look at them. Okay. I would much prefer urine or saliva, and I'll talk about that down the road. So what are some signs and symptoms of PMS? Obviously, breast tenderness, menstrual cramps. One thing to know is if your cramps tend to start before you start bleeding, I do in the back of my mind think, we need to at least rule out endometriosis, but that's a separate conversation. Insomnia. So often right in that. So, okay. Day one is the first day you bleed. Okay. So most women will bleed, say 5 days plus or minus. And then, so we have 4 weeks of a 28-day cycle, whether you're bleeding or not. Okay. So if day one is the first day you bleed, if you're after menopause and you're not bleeding, day one is generally the full moon or the new moon. If you're on contraception, it's a little bit different, right? If you're having irregular menstrual cycles, you can still track. We track a 28-day cycle in a very different way, and I'll talk about that. But let's say day one is the first day that you bleed. So there's week one. Week two is when we go into ovulation. Week three is the PMS week. Or really, it's end of week three and into week four. And week four is when it really ramps up and when we really feel the most different, crummy is another word. And then we go back to week one. Okay, so we're talking that PMS week, the week before you bleed, if you're bleeding every week. If you're not bleeding, the week before the full moon or the new moon, right? So just insert whatever it is. But I want you to shift the way you're thinking. This isn't just for women that are bleeding every month. Okay. So cramps, insomnia, often it's striking. Headaches, specifically menstrual migraines, can definitely, if yours are cyclic, I'll talk about what is going on from a hormonal perspective. Moodiness, and moodiness is the thing that I hear most often. The viper came out. I can't believe I took that so personally. I really reacted. I bit my husband's head off. I got mad at my sister. I had an argument at work. And afterwards I go, oh my gosh, I just started bleeding. No wonder I was so crabby, or I just don't even want to be around people, right? Whoops, did I really say that? The irritability is striking. And particularly, once again, in that like women in their 40s, deep into the perimenopause chapter, it tends to be striking. And so for those women, I want you to really listen up, because I'm going to give a lot of suggestions for that specifically. Often for some women, sadness is pronounced during that time. There can be a significant decrease in libido. But what's striking is there's often right before, like the day before you bleed, there's a little surge of testosterone. And sometimes there's that one last hurrah where your libido comes back and then you start bleeding. But for the most part, during that PMS week, the week before you bleed, libido can drop. It's often a time when women will experience more pronounced anxiety. Hair will become more brittle. There's bloating, more body aches. Often women will experience more constipation, putting on a few pounds. Often it's just water weight. Obviously, the cravings are insane. You just go, oh my gosh, I'm fiending for chocolate or whatever it is for you. Women are often more reactionary during that time. Exhaustion will be more pronounced. Okay, just why did I sign up to do that thing? Why did I sign up to volunteer? Why did I sign up to host that party? Why did I sign up to do that project? I just want to rest, right? I'm tired. I didn't sleep well. I want to just stay in really comfortable clothes. That's the PMS week. So for the men that are listening to this, you probably, hopefully, are noticing rhythms in the women that you're around, especially the women that are in your close infrastructure. And there is a lot of reasoning behind this from a hormonal perspective. And we as women, we're very dynamic, ever-changing beings, okay? Relationships often are feeling more pressure during that week. And then for women who have really heavy cycles and they bleed heavy, often the PMS chapter is even more intense. For you, you know what it is for you. Okay. It might be just one of those things. It might be a laundry list of those plus some others. But what's most important is that you track. Okay. Many use like menstrual tracking apps. I have never found a menstrual tracking app that I really like, because I think it's a very myopic, minimalistic view. We're not just tracking bleeding, my friends. You want to track your mood and your creativity and your libido and your energy level and your body cramps and your discharge and your motivation to engage in relationships, whatever it may be. There's a lot to track. And so, I make a little tracker for the women that are in my inner circle, but you can also just write down the things that you start noticing, make a little grid and start keeping track of it. The more that you track, ideally for a good 3 months, you'll start noticing trends. Okay. And you'll start noticing what is real for you during that week 4 of your menstrual cycle. I think of it as your fall time. If all 4 weeks are a season, your bleeding time is your winter. And I did a whole episode on this. It's episode 11 if you want to listen more into this 28-day cycle. Okay. So 30% of PMS is affecting their ability to do work. So they are medicating. Okay. So 30% of women, their PMS is actually affecting their ability to do work. And so now they're medicating. They're going on the pill. They're taking NSAIDs like ibuprofen. They're taking migraine medication. They're going on antidepressants, anti-anxiety meds, right? They're trying to go, what in the heck is going on? And I go, well, wait a minute. That's not how I work. That's not what I recommend, because we're putting a Band-Aid on a festering wound. Okay. You add in an ibuprofen during your PMS week and your bleeding time, and every time you might be theoretically decreasing inflammation, but at the same time, you're wreaking havoc on your gut lining. You're wreaking havoc on your leaky gut potential. Okay. And now you're not absorbing the nutrients that you're eating. And remember, the gut is the second brain. So I want to highly recommend and urge you to not just go to ibuprofen, not just go to the birth control pill. And I'll talk a little bit about why. And what's fascinating is NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs such as ibuprofen, can actually suppress ovulation and lower progesterone levels. So the big thing that I want you to hear, if nothing else, in the midst of this is one of the big causes of PMS, menstrual migraines, all these symptoms I've already mentioned, is a wide gap between your estrogen and your progesterone. So for the most part, what we need to do is help bring up your progesterone during that week and help decrease the excess estrogen or just narrow that gap. And so once again, something like progesterone, you're kind of making the long-term scenario worse. Okay. Same with going on the pill. So often you'll go to your provider and they go, here, I'll just prescribe you the birth control pill or the ring or the patch. And now they're giving you exogenous pharmaceutical hormones. So now you're not ovulating. So your body stops producing progesterone. Plus, we have to worry about post-pill syndrome. It's wreaking havoc on your gut. You're putting extra work on your liver. What we've learned is it really hurts your adrenals. And then, like I said, there's post-birth control syndrome. And we don't know the effects, but I definitely see the effects in women as they go into perimenopause and menopause that were on birth control pill for their life. Now, I want to say I'm a huge advocate of contraception. Okay. So for us to take control of our fertility, if you know that you don't want to get pregnant and that is your form of contraception, we work with what we've got. But you go into it with eyes wide open, knowing that going on the pill just to address the symptoms of PMS, there are other options. Okay. Going on the pill just to address the hot flashes or going on an antidepressant to address the PMS. There are so many other options, and we can talk about it from a nutritional and supplemental perspective. I want to say out loud that episode 8 in my Women's Vibrancy Code podcast, I interviewed Dr. Sarah Hill, and that's specifically about your brain on the pill. So if you're leaning into, wait a minute, I didn't know that that was a thing. If I'm on exogenous hormones, such as the pill, the patch, the ring, the progesterone IUD, you might want to listen in to that episode. It was fascinating. And she wrote the book, Your Brain on the Pill. Okay. So let me go into some solutions, and I'm just going to kind of weave in. So I want to talk about some solutions. I'll go back to some reasoning. And that way I want to make sure that you're staying engaged, taking notes, and really getting value out of this. So what are some things that you can do? If you're someone who's like, yes, that's me, I'm definitely struggling with PMS. And once again, this is even if you're not bleeding. So if you're beyond menopause, you haven't had a bleed in more than 12 months, but you're still noticing the cyclic nature. Listen, the moon pulls tides, my friends, it has a big effect on us. And if you're noticing the cyclic nature of irritability or constipation or bloating, I want you to still be thinking this, I'm speaking to you. Okay. So we have to hydrate well. Okay. We have to ensure that we're taking out what's called endocrine disruptors. I'll talk more about it, but something as simple as making sure that your water is not stored in plastic. We're thinking glass, stainless steel, ideally half your body weight in ounces of water a day. More than that is better. I would love it if you could get your full weight in body ounces. Make sure your water is filtered well. I like the Berkey filter. For some of you, shifting up the water where maybe you add some Himalayan sea salt, or maybe you add some green powder like the Innerlight greens or spirulina or chlorella. Maybe you add some lemon juice or apple cider vinegar to your water to help decrease the bloating and the burping and the heartburn, right? To help increase your better digestion of the food that you're eating. Okay, sometimes we have to play around with not just how much water, but the quality of water. And then adding in warming liquids, specifically your adaptogen elixirs. For anyone in my space, you hear me talk about adaptogen elixirs every single time I speak. Okay, it is so important because what we're doing is we're going in and giving the adrenals what they need. What are adaptogens? They come from the plant, mushroom, botanical kingdom. They help the body better adapt to stress. And you can grab my free adaptogen elixir recipes. I'll put the link down below. You just grab the adaptogen. You add in a protein source, which is generally collagen powder or a vegan protein powder. And then you add in your fat source, maybe CBD oil, MCT oil, something like that, hot water, sweeten it to taste. I generally use stevia drops, maybe some honey, and then your nut milk. Okay. Now you're actually feeding your adrenals. You're giving your foundational well-being and cellular safety that kick in the butt. So now it goes, oh, I got the memo. I'm actually going to go produce those hormones that I'm needing to reduce the symptoms of PMS. Okay. So we're going to root cause once again. And so what I want to talk about is wanting to address estrogen and progesterone and that gap There's no single pronged approach. Okay. It's not like you just go add one supplement or take one drug or try one thing. We really, from a functional medicine perspective, we look at our gut well-being, our adrenal well-being, our liver. Are we pooping every day? Okay. Your detoxification pathways, and it's all relevant and it's all important. So the more that you stay in my space, the more you'll continue to just add on more layers. You get to pick and choose one thing that was the key thing that you take from each time that you listen to me, and start applying that one thing. And so I already encourage you by the end of this that you're listening to, if you just write down one thing, what's one thing that I go, that I can grab onto and start implementing for some change? Sleep. Sleep is significant. So when we are not sleeping, we're increasing inflammation in the body. We are increasing dehydration in the body. We are decreasing testosterone production in the body. We are adding stress to the body. Okay. So there's a whole nother topic for me to do a deep dive into sleep, but I want you to know that your hydration and your sleep are drastically impacting your experience of PMS. Okay. So things that we can do is blood sugar management throughout the day, not skipping meals, making sure you're getting your adaptogen elixir in first thing in the morning, eating quality protein and fat throughout the day, and a wide variety of fruits, vegetables, and berries. Seriously, every time you sit down, can you look at your plate and say half of it comes from plants? Okay. I have a minimum of 3 colors on my plate. White, brown, and yellow don't count unless it's a bright yellow bell pepper or something. We're decreasing our inflammation. Okay. We are turning off screens in the evenings, getting off the computer, getting off of the phones, not watching television. We're starting to wind down in the evening time. We're watching our caffeine intake throughout the day. We're watching our alcohol intake in the evening. All of that is going to impact your sleep. And then watch what happens to your PMS symptoms. It's significant. So for those of you that are still bleeding, what I want you to know is ovulation is the main event. Okay. Your first half of your menstrual cycle is estrogen dominant. Your second half of your menstrual cycle is progesterone dominant. Remember, most of what causes PMS is the big gap between the estrogen and progesterone. So what stimulates progesterone is ovulation. So for some of you, if you're having irregular menstrual cycles, you're not ovulating. So now the body is not producing progesterone. When the body's not producing progesterone, now you have estrogen dominance, because the estrogen is high and not being balanced out. So now the symptoms of PMS are striking. Okay. Now, particularly for those of you that are in puberty, or your mothers of girls in puberty, or in perimenopause, that time period like 35 to 55 until you've stopped bleeding, the estrogen is doing a major roller coaster. It's like recalibrating, finding its way. It's the 2 bookends. And so while it's recalibrating, it goes way up and then it goes way down. The erratic nature of PMS becomes more striking. Okay. So we have to perpetually go in and go, okay, how am I taking care of my gut? How am I decreasing inflammation? How am I helping the body better detoxify, reducing toxic load? Okay. And hopefully you all have some ideas of what that looks like. Stress reduction, lots of plants, making sure you're pooping every day. I will talk a little bit about endocrine disruptors specifically to decrease that toxic load. Okay, let's talk a little bit about toxic load. So once again, we want our estrogen to be solid and stable during the first half of the menstrual cycle so that we ovulate. Okay, but we don't want it to be too high. Okay, so we want to be aware of where does exogenous outside the body estrogen come from. I already mentioned your plastics. Okay. Beauty care products, making sure that your makeup, your shampoos, your conditioners, your lotions, your laundry detergents, your dish soaps, all of that have no fragrance in them. You want them fragrance free, paraben free, phthalate free. You can always use ewg.org as a resource. And I love the Skin Deep app. Scan your products. What happens is the toxins that come in most of the beauty care products that women use actually mimic estrogen in the body. It's called xenoestrogens with an X. And so it mirrors that estrogen. And now the body is taking it on. And now we have excess estrogen. Okay. It leads to yucky things like estrogen dependent cancers and more menstrual migraines and blah, blah, blah. But we want to perpetually figure out how can we decrease that toxic load. Okay. Making sure we're filtering our water can be significant, but we also want to look at whatever the toxins that we're exposed to, from the water we're drinking, the air we're breathing, the stress level that we're under. How are we supporting our body getting the estrogen out? Okay. That's through pee, poop, and sweat. So can you try to sweat on a regular basis, at least 3 times a week, go into the sauna, do a high endurance workout? Are you making sure that you're pooping every day? I'm really not kidding. It's amazing to me how many women come into my space. They're simply not pooping every day. You have to poop every day. Okay. You have to poop every day. That alone will help get that estrogen out, because what happens is if you're not pooping, the body is actually reabsorbing it and it circles back around, and now it adds to the estrogen dominance. I want to also say alcohol. So I mentioned alcohol in the evening hours in the sleep conversation. So what we know is that a glass of wine or its equivalent can increase your estrogen by as much as 30%. And so often what happens is women, particularly in that perimenopause chapter, they'll start having a glass of wine in the evening to wind down and help you take the edge off and help you quote unquote sleep. I'll tell you, it's creating sedation, not sleep. Very different. Sedation is not sleep. You actually don't get into REM. So you're actually not resting and rejuvenating. So you wake up the next morning more tired. Plus, you're actually throwing off your estrogen even more. And so I think that that's an important thing to say. And then I mentioned caffeine. Caffeine throughout the day, it's putting the Band-Aid on because you're so tired because of all the other stuff. Now you're adding the caffeine to try to keep going throughout the day, but now it's impacting your sleep. So you're not getting good sleep. So now you're waking up the next morning feeling more exhausted. So now you're doing the caffeine and you're making crummy food choices and you're more dehydrated, and now your body's more acidic and it's not absorbing the nutrients from the food that you're eating. Do you get what I'm saying? So for some of you, I don't want you to stop listening. If you're like, hell no, I'm not going to let go of my caffeine. I'm not going to stop drinking. You have to find, where is your threshold? Can you strengthen your muscle of risk? Can you strengthen your muscle of stepping outside of your comfort zone and trying something new for the sake of feeling better? So it's not just, what am I going to take out? I can't, I have to deprive myself. Woe is me. It's, I want to feel spectacular. And I'm going to make choices that are going to make me feel better. So I'm going to choose to take this out. And then what do you replace it with? Okay. And obviously, if you're in my inner circle, we do a deep dive into all of this. I want to say out loud, it's a journey, not a destination. So this is not quick fix. Okay. Generally, the way a menstrual cycle goes, your bleed, your month of PMS has really been impacted by the last 3 months leading up to that. The quality of the egg that you ovulate, if you're wanting to get pregnant, is impacted by the 3 months leading up to that. So this is a long game. This isn't, I take an ibuprofen and the headache is gone in 30 minutes. Okay. I take an antibiotic and I'm feeling resolution of my symptoms within 2 days. That's not what I'm talking about here. Okay. This is shifting our mindset, doing lifestyle supplementation shifts every step of the way so that we're perpetually up-leveling who we are in the world and how we're feeling overall so that it becomes a new lifestyle. One other thing, just as a side note, is dry brushing. I wanted to make sure that I mentioned that. If you just do, you can get a dry brush your skin before you get into the shower. You're going to brush towards the heart. So your extremities, right? And then your belly, your back, everything towards the heart. That also helps with detoxification on top of making sure that you're urinating because you're drinking plenty, sweating often, and pooping often. Meat is a conversation to have in the context of this. I'm not opposed to meat. I actually think that for most of us, meat can be really helpful because it's a great source of protein. And if you're going to consume meat, can we make sure that it's maybe 1 meal a day, not 3 meals a day? If you're eating red meat, that you make sure it's free range, antibiotic, and hormone free. Okay. Making sure that you're choosing a wild salmon and some nice, healthy chicken, right? But it's not too much heavy saturated fats from your red meat and your pork. Okay. That it's in moderation. And what we know is that high meat diets tend to increase your estrogen, which can once again lead to more pronounced PMS symptoms. Some things to do. So I've talked a little bit about what things not to do. What do we replace it with? Okay. Eating frequent meals, lots of colors, diet super rich in fruits and vegetables. The more, the better. Hiding things in smoothies and soups. Okay. So you can fit so much into a smoothie. You use the base as just like a base nut milk or water. You can add in a banana. It's going to sweeten it. some blueberries, some quality plant-based protein powders, but then you can go a handful of greens, right? I always buy the big bag of dark greens and I put them right in the freezer and they crumble. They're not good for salads, but they're great for soups and smoothies. You can even have frozen cauliflower, like at Costco. I get the frozen cauliflower, broccoli, that kind of stuff is great to help your body detoxify estrogen. And cauliflower itself doesn't have as striking of a flavor as broccoli does. So can you sneak a handful of cauliflower into your smoothies, right? To help get that excess estrogen out. What else can you sneak in? Some nuts, some seeds, some quality omegas, right? Some CBD oil, some hemp seeds, some chia seeds. There's so much that you can sneak into smoothies, and then same with soups. Like save any of the vegetables from yesterday, cut them up, throw them in the soup. You can hide onions and garlic and ginger and bell peppers and tomatoes. If your kids say that they don't like vegetables, there's so much that you can sneak into a big soup, right? Simmer it over a long time period, and now the nutrients from those vegetables are getting into the broth of the soup. I also want to say out loud, increasing dietary fiber. Oh my gosh, I can't say it enough. When you're eating your fiber-rich fruits and vegetables, at least 25 to 40 grams a day. I'm not a big one on counting grams, but just know you want a lot of dietary fiber. So adding in your ground flax every day, wide variety of fruits and vegetables, that's going to help the detoxification pathway. It also helps to increase the chance of you getting better prebiotics into your body. Prebiotics help turn the good bacteria on. So now your gut microbiome is better. That's the second brain. Now you're producing your serotonin, so you feel happy. Your immune system is able to turn on. I mean, there's so much that I could talk about there. Okay, some other just simple key things that you could try to do from a supplemental perspective. Make sure you're taking your omegas. So if you're going to do a fish oil, I like Nordic Naturals. In our home, we do vegan omegas. So I do the Juice Plus omegas and they taste nice. I even open up and sometimes put the actual oil on my skin. And so that's going to be lovely for hormonal well-being, adrenal well-being, lubricating your nails, your skin, your joints. I mean, there's a lot about healthy omegas for brain health and focus, right? Quality vitamin D as in dog is valuable. I think most everyone should be adding vitamin D. And if you look at your most recent blood work, vitamin D as in dog is one that you want to look at through blood. Your provider orders what's called a 25 hydroxy vitamin D. The ranges are way too wide. I want to see it between 60 and 80. So look at your most recent. If it's below 60, then it's a good idea to add some vitamin D and go out and get some sun. Magnesium is one that's super important for all of us, just because most of the food that we're eating is deficient in magnesium. The soil that our plants are growing in is depleted. And so most of us need additional magnesium, but particularly in this conversation of PMS, I highly, highly recommend that if you're already doing a magnesium, you double the dose during your PMS week. So what that can look like is you can do a magnesium citrate in the evening. I like Calm, CALM. It's a magnesium calcium. I like the raspberry flavor. I'll do that with my ground flax and a tall glass of water. Now I'm getting in fiber. It's going to help me have a great bowel movement the next morning. And the magnesium is going to help me decrease any muscle aches, tension, anxiety, help me sleep. And it's going to do wonders for the PMS. And then in the morning, do your magnesium glycinate, which is generally encapsulated. And that's going to be great for, once again, aches and pains in the body that can sometimes happen during that PMS week. And then the magnesium is going to go in and support the reduction of the constipation and the bloating that often happens during that PMS time. So as much as 300 to 400 a day, milligrams of that magnesium. And you can even double that. You just don't want it, you don't want it to give you diarrhea. So you can kind of listen into your body. Evening primrose oil is another one during that week before you bleed. It's going to help bring in some quality phytoestrogens. You can get it encapsulated specifically for the women in the perimenopause and menopause chapter. Taking an evening primrose oil, you can even do it daily, but particularly during that PMS week and into like the first 3 days of bleeding. And then eating your vitamin C rich foods. I mentioned evening primrose oil as a phytoestrogen. Ground flax is another phytoestrogen. Your quality soy is another phytoestrogen, as long as it's organic and non-GMO. So your miso soup, your tofu, there's great protein powders out there that are soy-based. Once again, as long as they're non-GMO and organic, okay? Soy that is genetically modified or non-organic is a no-no, just like in my world in an ideal world, gluten is a no-no, but particularly that soy. Chase tree berry is another one. For those of you that really struggle with PMS, it's this balance of bringing in the nutrients that we need, decreasing the estrogen, but also bringing up the progesterone. So some things that you can do to bring up the progesterone are your chase tree berry, which is known as Vitex. Generally do that, right at the beginning, like the end of week 3, beginning of week 4 into 3 days of bleeding. Give it a good 3 months of consistent effort. Also, your cinnamon and your ginger are going to help support increased progesterone production. Wild yam cream can be helpful. You just do like a dime size at the bend of your elbow, the bend of your knee during that same time period. And you just, try it out for yourself. Now, obviously, if you don't know exactly what's going on, if you have high inflammation, if you have a strong family history of cancer, if you have PCOS, like there's lots of scenarios where I don't want you to just go grab and try these things. You want to have someone in your team who understands the value of diet, lifestyle, supplementation, and the right testing for you and your personalized scenario, right? That isn't just prescribing you a med and you're not just randomly taking a shelf of supplements. It's all relevant and your liver already has enough jobs every day. Everything you add into your mouth and your skin, you're giving your liver another job. Managing stress, I can't say enough. Like really, truly, whatever you can do to manage your stress levels, it's going to do wonders. From a testing perspective, I mentioned early on that blood is not the best way to look at a test. If you are wanting to take a peek at testing, you want to get the Dutch Plus test. That's going to look through saliva and urine at your hormones as well as your adrenals. Once again, the test you can just order yourself. Actually, it just ships to your front door. You can do it as long as you have someone that really knows the test to interpret it and give you personalized recommendations. And then making sure that you're having your thyroid tested. Okay. So make sure you're asking for a TSH, a free T4, a free T3, and your thyroid antibodies. If you're seeing a naturopath or a functional medicine provider, anybody who's mainstream allopathic, most of them are already going to be ordering that. But if you're looking at your blood tests and all you see is a TSH or just a TSH and a free T4, I want you to kind of step back and go, maybe I'm seeing the wrong provider. Okay. We get to look at, are we asking people for directions to places that they haven't been? Okay. Remember, only 1/3 of physicians graduate from med school having taken one nutrition class. Physicians are phenomenal at surgery. Okay. Knowing prescriptions, knowing pharmaceuticals, addressing that at a great kind of acute way, relieving symptoms. But often, in my opinion, the Band-Aid approach on a festering wound, it might relieve a symptom in the short term, but it's creating other side effects and other symptoms in the long term. And so if you're the type of person that is saying, I don't want a quick fix, I want to actually look under the hood and get to the foundation. I want to feel great, but I want it to be sustainable as a lifestyle without other side effects, without just covering up the festering wound, then that's what I'm talking about here. Regarding stress reduction, we think about what goes in and out of our eyes, our mouth, and our heart. It's all relevant. It's either serving you or it's not. And I know that's kind of extreme. I mean, there's always two sides of a coin plus the edge, right? But for the most part, what are you allowing into your eyes? What are you paying attention to? Through what mind's eye are you choosing to see yourself in the mirror, see the perspective, see the scenario? We're all just telling ourselves a bunch of stories. So I say, choose a different story, right? Choose a story that's uplifting to your heart, right? Choose to see through a mind's eye of gratitude, of hope. Experiment with taking the television off, turning it off, or even taking it out of your home. Can you limit screen time? Can you limit TV time? Don't have it constantly playing in the background. It's going in whether you realize it or not, and it's simply not serving you, right? Allow it to be deliberate. If, okay, now is TV time, what are you going to watch? What are you going to allow in? Is it serving you? Right? Looking at your prioritization of what do you actually have to do today? Can you take some things off of your list? Are you surrounding yourself with people because you feel like you should, but you actually feel like your energy is depleted by being around them? Can you start shifting the people that you spend the most time around? And so I'm talking about PMS from the perspective of a hormonal and foundational well-being. And so, of course, stress makes a difference. Of course, what we eat and personalized supplementation makes a difference. The last thing that I want to say is we get to give ourselves some grace, okay? I don't want to take away you feeling more emotional during that time, okay? That is a time where we are more emotional, and emotions are meant to be felt. Okay. We get to allow those emotions to be expressed. That's a time where we're not meant to be hosting parties and being around everyone and being on stage and doing the big presentation, right? That's a time that we really do want to kind of bring it in. Surround ourselves with our closest loved ones. Be in a creative space with our inner circle. All right. It's a time where we get to allow ourselves the pause to, you know what, I'm just going to step away right now because I feel myself feeling really perturbed, really irritated by my husband. And I actually have no idea why. And my guess is if I just give it a couple days, I'm not going to be so mad at him. So give ourselves the grace to step away, take a couple breaths, choose not to speak it out loud, create some separation. If you're a mother in perimenopause with a daughter in her teenage years, can you use that time? Because often your menstrual cycles will mirror one another to allow for a little bit more space, right? I'm just going to choose to not talk about that right now. I'm going to choose to step away and go upstairs and take a shower, go change my clothes, do a change of state, put on some music, right? Drink some more water, take a few extra breaths. And as you're tracking and you're more aware of what's happening to you in this chapter of PMS, the more you can let your loved ones know. Like if you're in a working environment with a bunch of women and now your menstrual cycles are mirroring one another, it's good for you to know. If there's men in your world that spend a lot of time with you, it's really helpful to let them know. So we can preemptively go, you know what? I'm going into that time. So put your suit of armor on so you don't take it personal when I bite, because I'm not really biting you. I'm just feeling more irritable. I'm just responding. And the emotions need to be felt. So that's a time to journal it out, but not necessarily send it out at those people. It's a time to listen in. If you're like, I'm going to quit my job. Okay, listen in. Maybe it is time to quit your job, but don't make the rash decision during that week. Don't leave the relationship. Don't, whatever it is, journal it out, listen in, and wait until you're done bleeding and into your spring week or your summer week and go, okay, I've sat with it a little bit. That emotion was real. That experience was real. And I'm not going to make a rash decision. Is it a decision I really want to do? Maybe it is time to leave that relationship or leave that job or try something new, whatever it may be. And we give ourselves some grace. So the more that you track, the more you can preemptively plan for how you're interacting socially and what the household will feel like. And you can plan for the constipation and the bloating and the aches and pains. So you're going to increase your magnesium, right? You're going to increase your hydration. You're going to schedule in more rest. Anyway, hopefully this has been helpful. Thank you. I hope this was relevant. I hope this was helpful. Keep in mind, PMS is a real thing. And just because it's common doesn't mean it's normal, right? Remember that I gave some key tips to help bring your progesterone up, to help bring your estrogen down, but not too low down, help your body better detoxify, and help shift the way in which you're seeing the scenario. So anyway, I think you're all awesome. Hopefully it's helpful. Until next time, ta-ta for now.
Thank you for listening to the Woman's Vibrancy Code. Connect with us and take the first step to transforming your energy, hormones, and libido at thewomansvibrancycode.com. Cheers to your zest and vitality. Make sure to follow for weekly power-packed value.